Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to this tutorial. Right now what we have is a server that can communicate to the client, and that's working just fine. But what we're going to do in this episode is create an input field right here, so the client can communicate back to the server and they can actually, exchange information if they want to. So that is what we're going to be doing today, and we're also going to identify who connects. As you can tell right here, I have a client name as a public field. I'm going to start my server, connect, and it says my name, and I can also say what's up. And it also identifies me with that very name. So that is what we're going to do today, guys, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so last time we left, we had a server, we had the chat window with a small UI piece, and that's pretty much it actually. We didn't really start coding the client, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's go ahead, right click here, create a new client, and open this up. Now let's do reload all on this, and we're going to be looking at creating our client. There is a few things we need here. The first thing we're going to need is a simple boolean to know if we're ready to actually receive message and send messages. So private bool, socket ready, which is going to equal false by default. You can put it here, or you can just simply leave it as B. We're also going to need an instance towards our TCP client, so private TCP client socket, and make sure you include system.net.sockets to actually use this type. The next one we're going to need is a network stream that we're going to call stream. Finally, a private stream reader and a stream writer. Those are in the using system.io. So this is my writer, and this is my reader, so stream reader. Now in terms of function, we are going to declare one, which is basically going to be like the connect point, the initial point where we decide we're going to be connecting to a server. So I'll do a private void connect to server, and I'll be calling this, actually I made this public because I want to be calling this from the button. So my button is going to be calling this function here. And let's start doing a little bit of comments. So if we're already connected, ignore this function. The way we do this is we're going to say if socket is already ready, then let's go ahead and do a return. That's the very first thing we do. Now, just down here, we're going to be defining where exactly do we connect. So let's do a default host and port values. String host is equal to, by default is going to be equal to localhost, so 127.0.0.1, and let's do a int port. By default we said it was something like 6321. Alright, so those are our value by default. Now what I'm going to do is, since we've made a little bit of UI here, I'm going to be using these little UI pieces and check if there's something in them. So this one is called host input, and this one is called port input. I'm going to declare a string that I'll just call h, and another int I'll call p for host and port. And I'm going to say h is equal to GameObject.find. We're finding the object name, host input, and now getting the component input field. So get component input field, which we can't get at the moment because we need to do using system.ui up here. Sorry, not system, using Unity engine.ui. Now we have access to input field. So we're getting the component input field and we're checking the text. So if there's something in the text, we're going to replace host by h. So if h is not equal to nothing, then host is equal to h. We're simply, and I'm just going to write it here, overwrite default host / port values if there is something in those boxes, the input boxes. For this one, since it's a int we need to convert, we'll do int.tryParse, and we're going to try to parse GameObject.find, finding the port input, get component input field, and text. If we manage to actually parse this, then output the value in p. Then we're going to say if p is not equal to 0, then port is equal to P. Okay, so we just, like, if you don't want to have like boxes, you can just keep the default values and don't mind about this code. Right, so let's just assume that we did define a good host and a good port value. We are going to try and create the socket that is actually connected to the server. So let's do a try catch again. Catching an exception if we can't. Exception I will call E. Gonna have to use system most likely. Yeah, using system. And if we were unable to actually create that socket, we're gonna do debug.log, say socket error is equal to a.message. Okay, so how do we go about creating that socket? It's actually fairly simple. We only have to do one thing actually, just say socket is equal to a new TCP client. Now TCP client takes in 2 parameters. Well, actually it has like 4 overload, but the one we're going to be using takes in 2 parameters, and it is the following one: host name and port. As simple as that. We have both, so host and port. Now since we're here, before we actually say that this socket is now ready, let's go ahead and just assign these values we have right here. So we'll do stream is equal to socket.getStream. We're going to create a writer, so new stream writer on that stream, and of course a reader, new stream reader on the same exact stream. Socket ready is now through, so we're ready to actually use that socket, and we managed to pretty much just create our connection. There is a lot of information in that start, but still, well, it's not a start, it's a connect to server. It could be in the start if you're making sure that it's called after the server has been instantiated. So you could do something else if you just want to go right away without having the boxes. Is you could have the server start here in a wake call, and you could have this in a start. All right. Now, what do we do at this point? So let's say that we are connected to the server. We're going to be running loops in a update. We're going to be looking, does the server want to say something to us? Like, is there a message we're receiving from the server? So we have to check that every single frame. Let's assume first that the socket is ready. So if we are first connected and the socket is ready, and we have some data available, so if stream data available, let's put that in a string again, so string data, reader.readline, and if the data is in null, then, on incoming data for this guy as well, so like this. And this one doesn't really need to know who is sending this. I mean, it can only receive messages from the server, so we don't need to actually send the TCP client in here. So on incoming data is something we don't have just yet, so let's go ahead and create it. So private void on incoming data, string data. And for now, all we're going to say at the moment is something like debug.log server, if I can type. Server is saying the following. And that's pretty much all we really need in here. Alright, so let's take a step back. When we call connect to server at this point, we create a new TCP client on this host and this port, which should already be running right now on the server. And what happens here is we pretty much get accepted. So we get accept TCP client running and information about our socket, so about the client. Now the client gets his own definition added to the server client list, and the server goes back to listening for other clients to log in. But right here, we should be sending a message. We should be telling everybody that somebody just connected. Now, how do we go about doing this? And I haven't done this in the last episode, but maybe I should. Is we should be creating a function in the actual server that sends messages to the actual user. That would be quite useful. So let me quickly just put that in here. It's a really simple function. It doesn't take too much effort to understand. Let's do a private void broadcast. So we're sending information. That information is going to be data, so string data. And then after that, we're sending it to a list of clients. So we can decide whether we're sending it to only one person, to 2 person, 3 person, like only person in a certain team. We can be filtering that by putting the right client in this list that we send. So for each server client, C in client list, or CL for short, then we're going to try and send those messages. Else, and let's catch that exception and say debug.log. We have a write error. So write error plus e.message to client c.client name. Okay, so we're sending a message to everybody. That message needs to be put under stream. So stream writer is equal to a new stream writer, c tcp get stream. We get the stream of that very client and we write on it. So writer dot write line, we write data and we do a flush. Good times. Now, okay, so we pretty much got our function to send a message to everybody. We're going to take it, and whenever somebody connects, we're going to send a message to everybody about this person who just connected. So we're going to say broadcast. I'd like to get the client's name, so what I'm going to do is say clients at the index clients dot length, or count, sorry, -1, which means it's going to get the last one in the array. Since we've just added this line here, this is going to get the last index, the one we just added right now. So we're going to say that client name plus has connected. Something simple like that. Now let's not forget that broadcast also takes in a list of who exactly we're sending that message to, and since this is like a connection message, everybody should be able to see this. Now, do we have a list of client that contains everybody? Yeah, we do actually. That's clients like this, and this list will contain every single client there is. Okay, so that is going to work technically, and we're gonna give it a try right now actually. So let's go back in our game and add a client pretty much anywhere. What I'm gonna do is take the same server object, just put the client on here, and on the button add a function here. So let's just make sure you go on the onClick, add a function, drag and drop our object that contains the client script, and let's find client, connect to server. Now, if there is nothing in these boxes up here, I should be able to press on connect and have my message read already. So I'm going to hit connect, and it says server guest has connected. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but this is not called from a server. This is actually called from the client, which means we've connected right here by actually doing connect to server. Then this was called, and it went inside of the server, it accepted the TCP client, and then at this point the server sent a message back to the client telling them that somebody else has connected. So as you can tell, we started from client, then we went inside of server, server did a accept TCP client, it broadcast another message, and that message triggered this debug.log, which is on incoming data. And this way we just have a nice flow going on here. Now let's try pressing, oh, what happened? Yeah, so since a server, well, since this is Unity, it's actually not running in the background, so you might actually run up in the same error as I did right here if you just change your tab. If you don't want this to happen, you can go under build settings, player settings, and there is a option here to run in background, which is, well, I mean, you have to be running this constantly on the server. So if you have a server running, you can't just afford to pause it like that and hope that people are going to stay connected. Now I'm wondering if we just bugged our sockets. So server has still been connected. We're going to try and connect. Guess that's connected. That's perfect. Now we press on this again. It doesn't work because well, because our socket is already ready. So if you remember, if it's already completed, then we ignore this function. Now let's actually try this with more than just one client. Right now my client is on the same exact, well, game as my machine, we could say, on the same build as my machine. What I'm going to do is hit Control B, and I'm going to add this scene, sure, then have a standalone, build this, and do we want to run this? Yeah, let's actually run this. So I'm gonna say this is my chat, and we're gonna wait until this boots. Okay, so here it is. Gonna put that in a window mode, as small as possible. And now, if you remember, this is both a server and a client. It's asking me for some, since it's playing with the sockets, then it's asking me for permission, which I'm going to give. And now remember that this is actually a server that is running in the background, so I could be like tabbing out and we have no problem. Now what I'm going to do at this point is go on my Unity engine. While this is running, I'm not closing this. While this is running, I'm going to toggle off the server. This way, when I press on play here, I have no information. This is not a server. This one right here is not a server, but this one is. This one is already running on port 6321. So what I'm going to do is actually try to connect to him by hitting connect. And it says server guest has connected. So without even my server running here, it's running in inside the other window, we manage to get the message. Now let's turn that around just to try it. Right now I'm going to build again. This time on my build the server is not going to be running. So this one is not running. And if I start my game with a server this time, okay, so we have a server running. I'm going to connect as a guest, that's fine. And I'm also going to connect on this one, and we've received that message as well. So we have two persons connected right now to this very server. That's really hard to just see, that's very hard to just visualize. So we're gonna go ahead and create an interface that we can actually look at, you know. So we're back into Unity, making a little bit of UI actually. So what I'm going to do is just right click on canvas, have another panel window. Let's anchor this on the very left, going to put a size of say 600 here, why not? And we're gonna have our messages in here. So that's our chat window. Alright, so at this point we need to create an object that is going to define how the message are written. Since I want to create a prefab out of this, let's just start by creating a single message here. And I'm going to do a new UI panel, a panel again, why not? And I'm going to put a layout element on it. Just make sure the size right now is something like really small, maybe like 20 by 20. And with the layout element, I'll make sure the minimum width is actually something like 540 here. It doesn't seem to work because it's the minimum width, so you can actually change it here. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be putting it on expand right here. And let's have a minimum height of about 70 because we're blind and we need to see what's going on. That's going to be a panel message here, a message. So let me just rename that for message. And inside of it, we're going to be putting a text. So new UI, text. All right. So let's write something, let's write some stub value right here. So something like that. I'll make sure the text expand on both sides so I never lose some space here. Something like that. Font size might be a little bit bigger, like 25. That's our first message right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually take that message object that I've created, drag and drop it in my prefab folder. This way I have now a reference to that. And I'm going to drag and drop it again in the chat window so we have another one to look at. So right now we have two messages. They're positioned like, well, they're not really positioned right now. What I'm going to do is add a vertical layout group to my chat window. Make sure the child force expand is not on height. Could be on width though. Width is fine, but not height. And I'm starting from the upper left. That's also good. So every time we get a new message, it just stacks like that. Right. Now, let's go ahead and just save this, apply, oops, click on apply, and now we need to actually add those while the scripts are running. So what I'm going to do is delete that, go inside of my client, because all the stuff we do, all the visual stuff needs to be done in the client. And at the very top here, I'll quickly declare a game object that is going to be my chat container. And also declare another game object that's going to be my message prefab. Why not? That's good. So let's head back inside of the game, find our client, here it is. My chat window is this, and my message prefab is this prefab here. Now, what I am going to do is whenever we receive message here on incoming data, what I'm going to do is create a new message prefab. So let's do instantiate message prefab, and it can take in a parent, which is what we have right here. So let's just do comma chat container dot transform, and that's pretty much it actually. What we're gonna do after that is make sure we modify the text inside of it. So if we just quickly give this a try, you're gonna see that we get the messages spawning right here, and that's a really weird way to actually go about it, but actually no, that's working at least. Now we need to modify what's inside of it, and since this is a object and beneath that object there is a text object, we actually need to get that text object here. Now the way we're going to get that text component is like this. We're going to say this is a game object geo, and we're going to cast it as a game object, and then we'll do geo.getComponent in children. We need the text component, and that text component is going to equal, and we have our message, so data. Why not? Alright, so right now we have the server sending some information to the client, and that works just fine. We just tested it out, and yeah, that works fine. Now at this point what we need is the client to be able to send information to the server, and we're going to create some very simple stuff here. So maybe just another panel, new UI panel. This one's going to be on the right hand side because why not? Size 600. So we end up with having something similar as the other side, and that's going to be where you send information. So send. In here I'll have a input field that I'll just anchor here, width of 600, height of maybe 50 because we're blind, and just beneath that create a button, the actual send button. So same thing, anchor this on the right hand side, 600, and it's going to be just below it, send. Also changing the text inside of it. Okay, so let's make sure that input field also has a name that we can find a little bit later on. So send input. Alright, let's go back to our client for a little moment, and let's do something like let's do a general send function, just not only for like messages, but also for other kind of event that the client would tell the server. So maybe something like private void send, and we're sending data. This could be called pretty much at any time during your code, and here is what we're going to do. So we need to get the same stream that we read from, and we write something on it. So let's start by checking, is the socket ready? If it's not, we return. We need this to be activated, we need this to be working, and if it's working, we do writer.writeLine data, and then we do writer.flush. And that's all we really need here. So that's fine and all, that's the generic send function. Now let's do a private void on send button. So when we click on the actual send button, this is what needs to happen. Let's get the text we need first. So message, we find it on game object.find, and we call it, I think we called it send input, like this, .get component, just like we've done in the last episode. So input field .text. That's the message we get, and we can send it like this. So send message, And that's pretty much all we need. Everything should already be covered, so when we send a message, it should actually be filtered by the message pump here, this thing, and we call on incoming data. So let's assume that the client was able to send a message to the actual server. Then we're going to get client name, which is guest in this case. So guest has sent the following message plus the actual message. Let's actually test this out. It should actually be working right away. So I'm going to hit play here and write something. So let's write good times. Send. And it doesn't seem to work just yet, and I think that's because the socket is not ready, which would make sense. So the server is running in the background now, but we're not any client. We're not really a client right now. And the way I'm going to prove this is by toggling off the server building, so Control B. Now this way, this little window here is not a server at all. It's just running a client. There's no server beneath that at all. So if I go back in Unity, toggle my server on, press on start, server has been started, it's running right now, and I'm going to connect. Guest has connected, and we have a little message box just here. Now right now, guest has not been connected on this one. That's totally normal because nobody's here to listen. This is just a server right now. It's not even supposed to have a graphical interface. Well, I mean it could, but only the client receives the on connection event. Well, on the on incoming event that adds a message, only the client receives it right now. So on the chat server, if I write something like good times, which is something I really can't tell right now because of the scale of the UI, and I press on send, technically it should be sending here. And it is not working because I didn't link my button. So let's try that again really quickly. I'm gonna go beneath send, find my button, add a new onClick event, drag and drop my server in here, find the client function, send message, or is it send message? On send button is what we want, and actually we can't really click on it because it's private. So let's turn this into a public, and let's find it here. So function on send button, here it is. Alright, now we can start this test again, toggling off the server building, running this, now toggling on the server and running an actual server. We can connect. Actually, you know what? Let's actually connect on a boat. So I'm going to connect here. I'm a guest. I'm going to connect here. I'm also a guest, as you can tell. And I'm going to send a message with either one of those is going to work. So good times, send, and as you can tell down here, guest has sent the following message, good times. Same here. I'm going to say Dave is not a broccoli, send. And we've got that message too. Now we just need to make sure that everybody receives that. So if we just have a look at our flow right now, our client are able to send a message to the server is able to read it. We can tell it's able to read it because it's popping in our console down here. And this is directly called from server.cs. Now at this point, all we really need to do is to relay that information again. So as simple as it might sound, we're going to do a broadcast data. Oh, we have to broadcast to all the clients as well. So broadcast client, just by changing these line, we should now be able to have something that is working. So I'm going to press on play. This is my server and client at the same time, going to connect, say good times, and the information is sent back to me, as you can tell. Okay, so just to make sure everything works, going to be building this as, let's build this as only the client again. So the other window is what the client is going to see, and whoa, what is this? Okay, so I can't really build because this is running right now. Let me kill that. And build it again. So that's cool. That's only a client. And that is a client and a server. Going to connect here, going to connect here. And let's just write information here. So hello, send, and then somebody says hello. I'm going to say hi. This is the most interesting conversation you've seen in a very long time. All right. Before we actually call this a day and we say that we're able to make a chat server, let's actually just make sure we're able to tell who's guest 1 and who's guest 2. We can add like their little names to it as well. So the way we do this is quite simple. When we receive information from the client, we're on the server right now on the incoming data. We also have the name of that person, and that name can be found under server client.client name. So the data you send over here, that is the message you send. You can say see the client name plus maybe like 2 dots like that plus data. Then you can get to know which one is actually talking. Now if you get confused by the fact that both people are called guests, what you could do is I'm gonna go down here and in client, actually up here in client, I'll just add a public string that I'll call client name, and we'll modify it directly in the inspector. So here's my client. The name of my client is going to be something like my handle name, and we are going to actually just make sure it's plugged in. Where exactly could we plug in this thing? So whenever we connect to the server, we just connect, we get the stream rolling, that's fine. What we could do at this point is the server received the connection, but before we say, okay, somebody has connected, we can talk to the person again, ask him what is your name, then this guy sends the information back to the server, and then we can say to everybody, okay, this person has connected. So the client goes in, he says, hi, I'm here. The server says, who are you? And then he says his name, and then the server goes back and say, hey, Dave has connected, something like that. So it's like multiple ping pong messages until we actually get the client name. And let's actually try to make that work. The next part might open your eyes on how we do things in the back end a little bit. So what we're going to do is create some hidden messages, or like comment messages instead. Right now we're simply taking the messages that people input in the input field and we're sending it back, and that's a little bit weird. Well, that's not weird, but I mean that's even like in a really normal chat server doesn't do that, because the server needs to be able to communicate for other kind of events, such as somebody has connected and asking that person what is your name. And I'm just going to stop trying to explain that and actually do something of the sort. So on the server, when we receive a connection, let's go ahead and just send a message back to that one and only person. Right now what we do is somebody connects and we just shout out to everybody, oh, that person has connected. That's usually fine, but we don't even know the name of that person just yet. So we're gonna ask that person its name first. Here's what I'm going to do, and that's really something that might open your eyes a little bit. We're gonna do a broadcast, and I'll just type in caps lock and maybe like a special modulo sign in front of it, name. As simple as that. In my head, in my flow of code, saying this will basically ask, what is your name? Now that message, I'm only going to send it to one very specific client, and it's the one that just connected. So I'm going to create a new list of server client, and in that list there's only going to be one, and that one is going to be clients. Add the index client dot count -1. So we're creating a list, we're only putting one person in it, and then we're running it through our broadcast. What we can also do, so we don't really have to do all that mess, is create some overloads for broadcasts, but I mean this is quite easy to understand still. So we're broadcasting to that person name, and now only that very client that just connected gets this message. On incoming data, let's test it out. It should actually just say name for only one person this time. So it's asking, what is your name? Now if somebody else connects, so let me just build this up. It's actually built with the server. Let's try it. So let's check this out. So we're connecting, it says name, and now if I connect to this guy, I'm still connected, but it didn't say name again. And if I'm running something, Does it still work? Am I connected? Oh, I wasn't connected. Okay, so as you can tell, I click on connect, we have the name. It doesn't do it twice like it used to because we're only sending one message, and we can tell that everybody's connected because we're both receiving the messages. Right. Let's go back to that. At this point, what I'm going to do is if data is equal to modulo name, then I'm not going to run the rest. I'm not going to instantiate something. I'm simply going to do a return. But before that, we're going to send some information back to the server like this. So send, and the data we're going to send is the following. We could be saying, let's add another like special character, so maybe ampersand name, and is equal or pipe. That would be good. Okay, so name, pipe, and then we add the name next to that. So client name, the one we define in the inspector in this case. All right, so now only the server receives that information. We go back here, and in the, on incoming data here, if data contains the following string, I think it contains a string, yeah. So if it contains ampersand name, then that means we're receiving the name of someone. And here is what we're going to do. So we're going to say c.clientName. Now that's the server definition, is equal to data, the split. We're splitting the string, we're splitting at the pipe. And now the second index of that is going to be the name by itself. Is that going to work? I believe it is going to work. So at this point, this is a response with the name from the client, and we can tell everybody that this person has connected. So we can do a broadcast, and we can say that c.clientName, just like this, has connected. And we send this to everybody this time. So comma clients, all the clients. If I can write, I really can't write. I don't know why. And we want to do a return because this message we don't, you don't really want to send it twice, so we only do that once. Right, let's try this again. I'm going to build this client only as client name Nurkmine. So it's running right now. The server is not running, but there's a client and it's named Nurkmine in the background. Now let's go back here. This is Dave. Dave is going to be the server at the same time. Why not? Boot this. And if our flow works, everything's going to be really smooth, and we're going to get the name of pretty much everybody. So let's connect. Dave has connected, that's good. Now here, nothing is really happening. We're going to connect. Nurkmine has connected, that's pretty good as well. Let's write something. Hey, save or send. Then you get my name, and it says hey. Over here, hi. Dave says hi. Everybody gets the information, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and something we have to do before we actually go, and I forgot to do that, I'm quite quit. Oh, and something I forgot to do before we actually go is we need to actually get rid of the people from the server when they disconnect or when they close the application. I've just tested it out, and had some issues when people were leaving too early, and it just, it didn't sync well. So here's what we're gonna do. In the server, we check if every single client is connected. If they're not connected, we add them to a list. Now after that for each statement, in the same exact update, we are going to say, well, we're going to do a iteration on that disconnect list and actually just disconnect people if they need to. So let's do a for int I is equal to 0 as long as I is smaller than disconnect list dot count -1 I++. Now the reason I'm not doing a for each statement here is because we're removing from the list, so we're actually going to break the for each if we do an actual for each. So when we disconnect, all we really have to do is say clients. We remove it from the list, so remove, and we remove the one that is disconnect list at the index I. We also remove it from the disconnection list, so disconnect list remove at I. So remove it from both lists, but we can also, well, what I recommend that you do is also tell everybody that that person left, so they just talk and don't talk to nobody. What you can do is send a message here. So we're on the server right now, we can say broadcast to pretty much everybody, so broadcast to all client the following. We could say disconnect list I to get the client name plus has disconnected. Something simple like that. So technically what happens now is if we just start this without the server, actually if we build this without the server, we run it, then I go back on my server, toggle this on, change name, why not, this is Dave, and we just log in here, Dave has connected, Nerkmine has connected, I close this, Nerkmine has disconnected, and we also get a write error, so there's something else we have to do really quick, but at least we get the person that has disconnected, so that's pretty good. Now the second step we need to do is make sure that we destroy the client totally. So here is what we're going to do. We're going to write a function in here in the client that is called close socket, and that's just for cleaning up purpose. So let's do a if socket is not ready, then that means it wasn't really open in the first place, so we can just do a return. Oh, if I can write it right. And then we just clean it up. So let's do a writer.close, closing that stream, reader.close, socket.close, socket ready is equal to false. And that needs to be called on a few occasions actually. And since we're modal behavior right now, we're going to be using some function from Unity such as on application quit. If that happens, we do a close socket, and also on disable, so private void on disable, and we close the socket again. And right now everything should be cleaned up and the socket should actually be closed properly. We managed to create a simple chat client. Hopefully some of you learned something about this. Hopefully you learned something about how the TCP server client protocol works. We're going to be using similar kind of technology for our future game where we're going to be doing like a checker game. Something really simple is going to have like a little chat included, but it's also going to take in more than just the little messages like we're writing here. It's going to be taking like movement from player 1 and player 2. It's going to keep track of like who's winning or not, like chess piece, all of that. It's going to be an actual real multiplayer game that you connect to. So guys, be tuned for that. Hopefully it's going to be coming throughout the second week, so this quit. Hopefully it's going to be coming out through quit. Hopefully it's going to be coming out throughout the next week. And I'm going to be working on it because I always do it first on my hand, like when I'm by myself, quit. And hopefully it's going to be coming around the next week, quit. And hopefully I'm going to quit. And hopefully I can actually get this rolling by next week. And well, first I have to do it first, so I always do those quit, and hopefully I can just quit, and hopefully I can get this working by next week. I always do it on my side first, so I always code the whole thing on my side first, so I don't have too much interruption while I make those videos. So I'm gonna be working on that on my live stream, so if you want to see me struggle with those multiplayer thing, then you can just tune in. Link is always in the description. And like I said, I'm going to quit. And like I said, I'm going to have quit. And like I said, I'm going to try and get something running by next week, guys. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. If you learned something, please drop a like. I always appreciate that. If you have any comment or question, please leave them in the comment section below. Other than that, please subscribe and check out the Patreon page. Thanks for watching again. I'll see you next time.